Alright everyone, let's get right into post-processing now. This is the second part of a two-part series. If you haven't seen the first part yet, where we were optimizing and installing the universal render engine, I heavily recommend you to check that one out first, because you might not be able to follow along if you don't have the first things I did. I'll be just continuing on this part, on the first part. And yeah, if you followed along well in the first part, you will be ready to go for the second part. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we will go to our camera and we will enable post-processing right here. If you don't have this enabled, you won't be able to see the post-processing in the game. Second, we will create a new game object and I'll call it volume. You can call it whatever you want. Now we will add a component, and this will be the volume component. I already have it here. And this is like your main component. Everything I code it with post-processing will happen here. We will click new to make a new profile, and a profile will basically contain all the post-processing data. Like you see, I can just click new again and it will create a new profile. You can find this in your assets, but sometimes it gets stored at weird places. So if you go to the search icon and search profile, you can find the profile. We'll only be using one, but for sake of this video, I'll be I'll add a bloom effect to this one just to show you real quick. Right now I have the volume profile 2 on my volume script, but if I take this one, the normal, and I put it in here, it disappears. So basically you can change up your post-processing based on what you want. We'll just use the normal volume and I will remove this one for now. I'll go in short over all of the different things. I will skip past some data because it's not important and don't really have a lot of effect. And for sake of it keeping the video interesting, it would get pretty bored if I explain everything in great detail. First, before we actually get into the post-processing part, I first want to show you the two modes the volume shader has. It has the global mode, and this will just illuminate everything. And you have the local mode, and the local mode would basically use a collider, a box collider in this case. And like you see, I'll just scale this up 100, and when I scale this up 100, it's probably going to uncouple the thing. Yeah, there we go. Like you see, it has the volume right now, and currently it's in, now it's out. So basically, if you walk with the camera into this collider, the shading changes. And this is pretty nice because now you can basically have different shades. Because when you walk into a volcano, you don't want a green happy shade post-processing shading. No, you want like red and fiery. So you can basically use this to basically change the post-processing depending on where you are. You can set the priority of how high the priority is of the shader. And you are able to add a blend distance, which will basically make it easier to blend. Like you see, it's now not indirect, it basically changes the closer you are. And that's basically the modes you can have in the volume shader, but for this tutorial we'll be using global, and I did record this up front after I actually did the tutorial because I actually forgot to share it. So yeah, let's continue with the video. But one of the important things is bloom, and bloom will basically intensify light. So I'll go to add, and let's say we want to have the sky more orangey, like in the picture I showed at the first video. So we will go to bloom and we will give it a more orangey color. Now we want to intensify it, and I'm going to put it on 8 somewhere here. Of course I have like what I made last time, and you can experiment with this. Let's say if you want it to be like red, maybe. Going to put the scatter, basically how far it scatters. 1 is of course that it's very intense, 0 is that it's nothing. I'll keep it like this. I'm going to keep it once again on 8, and I'm gonna set this also to 8.36, and I will set this to orange. So now we have like a nice dawn like look. Next, I will show you the chromatic aberration. It will basically like zoom a little bit in and give you this trippy vibe. Basically, this could be nice if you had like a special scene. But you can basically, if you remove all colors, for example, and you make it black and white, you'll be able to make some pretty intense scenes for horror. This is pretty nice. Or if your character has some nausea, for example. We won't be using this for this video, so I'm going to remove this. Then we have color adjustment, and this is to heavily adjust colors. So what I said before, you can have like a little horror thing, and I just realized. And you can basically add this and basically have like a scary black and gray look to it. And of course you can change this up. I'm not going to go too much in depth into trying stuff out, because that's of course up to you. You'll be the one trying stuff out. You have the hue, and that will basically shift the colors very hard. I'll keep this on 0, I'll keep this on 0. Then we have the post exposure, and like you see, this will make things much lighter, because this will basically do the exposure of the lights, and of course it will also decrease light. You have the color filter, and this will basically filter colors and add much more effect to the color. So if I add the exposure, you can see that the lights are right now very, like the orange yellow colors are much more standing out up to this. You can add contrast. That will basically add more contrast between the different things. Of course, less is less, more is more. That's pretty obvious. We also won't be using this, even though it looks pretty nice, but I'm going to remove this now. This is definitely a very nice one if you want to play around with the colors. Then we have the color curves, and this is it is a pretty tough one to get. But basically you can say that you want to change the hue, and you can press override. Oh wait. And normally you should be able to click the buttons over here. There we go. And you can basically, I'm now changing up the green values. So let's say I want everything green, everything red. But this is like a pretty advanced way to change colors. There's much easier ways to do this, but definitely play around with this. It's pretty nice to play around, and you can basically say with bandy lines if you want things to be red, or like remove all the red. This will basically change up the RGB values using a curve, but there's a lot of ways to change the colors. But this is probably the most advanced way. Then we have the color lookup. And the color lookup, I actually don't know what it is. Can't tell. It has like a weird way of adding textures, but honestly, when you do something with it, I don't know this one, and it's probably not too important to use, so I'm gonna skip past that one. Alright, so now we are going to add some depth of field to the thing, and this is a pretty nice one because it will like focus on the things at hand. You have both Gaussian and bokeh. I prefer bokeh because it has more ways to do stuff. Alright, so I'm going to add more of the focal length to basically blur everything out so I can exactly see what I'll be using, and now I can set the distance. So this is of course from the camera. This is the distance from the camera. So right now it has no focus, but the higher I set the distance, the more things close to it will get focused. And you can put this very high, so basically almost everything gets focused, or you can put this very close to basically only focus the things you want. And I'll be taking only the things I want because that's what I do. I'll keep it on 10. Also keep the depth of field on its mark. The aperture will basically decide how much shade there will be added to it. You have of course the focal length, and that will basically decide how far you can see. But then you have the aperture, which will basically actually blur things out. So I'll keep it on, I'll set it to 7 somewhere. There we go. And I will also keep this one for this picture. Now we will be adding film grain, and film grain is a pretty cool one. Film grain will basically give you this blurry grain effect, like when I put the intensity up, you can basically see how there's like this blurry thing in front of it, and it will basically that will be pretty nice for a horror game. And Medium 4 had pretty big grain, so I really like this one because it has something. Like, it would be pretty cool if you're like playing, yeah, like Slenderman has this game, but like you'll be able to basically make a grain and really emulate like a little horror scene. It looks especially nice when you're like in third person, it seems. But that's definitely something to play around with. But we won't be using it, so I'll be removing this one. Now we will add the lens distortion, and this is a nice one because it makes your game looking kinda thick. But overall it's a pretty weird thing to play around with. You can basically play around with, you can change the scales of everything, but in the end I don't really see a lot of use for it. Now we have the lift, gamma and grain, and this is a pretty nice one because this will allow us to clear everything up, make things look a little bit more better, change the shades. So I will press all and I'll be moving things around so I can basically check out what I want. This will basically color the entire scene, and I can set the intensity of how hard I want this to influence. So this of course makes things dark, this makes things bright. This is the white value, by the way. So I'll just keep this fairly decent, and I'll be keeping this pretty much to the white to prevent things from really getting too dusty, but I still want to influence it. And I'll also add a little bit of blue to basically give the sky a little bit more bluish color. Of course this is pretty like optimal for me. I feel like this gives a pretty nice vibe, and there we go. Alright, this is good enough. Now we will go, and I'll keep this one again. Now I will go to the motion blur, and motion blur you won't be able to see it, but motion blur will basically blur the camera when moving around. So basically if you make like a quick move to the left, the screen gets blurred, and this is mostly performance wise, so the game gets a little blur. If you like swipe your hand in front of you really fast, you can see that you can't see like your hand frame by frame. It looks a bit blurry because it goes so fast, and that's basically motion blur. This is mostly performance wise, but of course this is not going to change anything in the game in this picture, so I'm gonna keep it out. Then we have the Panini projection, and I think the Panini projection is pretty nice when you play virtual reality, because this makes your game look really wobbly. Once again, it's pretty fun if you want to have like this high effect. I did this in virtual reality once, and it was really damn funny how it looked, and yeah, it was kind of trippy, but it was really fun. Now we have the shadow, midtones and highlights, and this is mostly pretty self-explanatory, but it has some weird things to it. You basically have curves this time, and these curves will make things a little bit difficult to understand. But because we have like this spring-like effect, we of course want to put extra color on red. So we can basically say that the curves, just realized that I don't like how dark it is right now. So I'm going to Before I do this, I'm just going to add another one real quick, and that will be the white value. The white balance, and I'm going to cheat and put this one first. And we will basically add some more temperature to really scale up the stuff, so we can have like a little bit more understanding of what we're doing. Because I know what is, I'll be able to not have to like go over everything, but like you see now things are starting to look pretty much like we wanted to, like the picture. And I'll now be able to play with these values. These will basically say how hard it will influence based upon the other ones. So I'll put this to like, let's say 60. There we go. And now we will say with the midtones, and the midtones will basically say everything in between the shadows and the light, of course. And we will give this a little pinkish, but we don't want that to influence everything too much, so I'll just put a little bit to the side. These curves will basically say how much things will influence it. Of course, you can once again do the white values, but we're not going to be doing that. And then we want to add a lot of green to the table. And we want this to... No, never mind, I don't really like the green. There we go, I'll just give it a little bit... I'll keep it like this. And these are all the things we want for this, to end this, but I'll just continue with the other ones. And then there is like split toning, but honestly it has some weird effects, but in the end I don't really see any use of it. It's basically what we did already with a lot of different things, and it has different ways of changing them. It's something to play around with, but there are much more efficient ways like I showed you before. And there's a vignette, and a vignette is pretty nice. We'll be also using a vignette. A vignette will basically create a circle around the video, around your view, and it will basically add like a, just show it to you, it will basically add like a blur. So let's say that you are like, you're almost dead and you have like this bloody vibe around you. You can basically add a vignette to really sell it. You also can use rounded, but I personally suggest you not to use rounded. I would keep it like this and add like some intensity to it. I'm also going to change some white balance because currently I feel like that should change a little bit. Oh wait, white balance. This is fine. So a vignette will basically show like around you. This is pretty nice, especially for like when you're doing like some kind of movie like thing, like a shortcut in a video where it's basically someone talking. A vignette will really give a very nice effect when you have like a little cutscene, or just like in this case. And as last, tone mapping, but I honestly also don't really understand what it does. Well, it does something, but I just don't know what. But alright guys, that's it for this 2 video series. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I was able to learn you something. This was more of a look at me doing it and see what the different things are. I still hope it really helped, and I hope you were able to recreate this scene, and from here on out you're able to do things yourself. The only thing I can tell you is play around with it. You don't really need to have like a goal. You can tell yourself to go like, alright, I want a yellow sky, and well, what will happen when I remove depth of field, and what will happen when I remove everything else? I'll keep the white balance on, and let's see that what will happen when I do this, for example. Like the possibilities are endless, and it's up to you to really experiment with these things and really figure out what you want. So yeah guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it a lot, and I hope to see you in my next tutorial. Definitely subscribe if you're new here to the channel, and of course in the comments give me feedback. If you want suggestions on different tutorials, I'll definitely look into it. And yeah, bye.